It winds itself. It plays for those who listen, and it always demands a price. The doll. I was 11 when the doll came into my life. My grandmother gave it to me on a gray Sunday, the kind of day where the house smelled like dust and rain-soaked leaves. The doll was porcelain, delicate, with glass eyes that caught the light and refused to let it go. She wore a pale dress edged in lace, the kind of fashion long dead but somehow stubborn enough to survive through her. But the most curious thing was what she carried. Resting in her stiff, painted hands was a tiny music box. Its surface was etched with constellations, fine lines shimmering faintly under the lamplight. When I wound the key and opened the lid, the melody began. Slow, deliberate, a lullaby that didn't sound like anything I'd ever heard. Inside, a small maiden spun on a golden pin. She wasn't a ballerina, not quite. She was dressed like a figure from an old almanac, her arms raised toward the stars painted above her head. As she turned, her porcelain smile seemed almost alive, as though she knew a secret I hadn't learned yet. My grandmother didn't say much, only that it had been waiting long enough. Then she pressed my hand firmly over the doll's. That night, I set the doll on my desk, facing the bed. I didn't want to admit it, but I felt her gaze even after the music stopped. And when I finally drifted off, I dreamed of the melody continuing, echoing faintly through a place that wasn't my room at all. A gentle song. For the first few nights, it wasn't frightening at all. If anything, the doll felt like company. I would wind the tiny key before bed, and the melody would spill softly into my room. It wasn't cheerful exactly, but it was steady, predictable, like an old friend breathing in rhythm with me. The spinning maiden inside the box twirled slowly, her porcelain dress catching glimmers of lamplight, and I found myself strangely soothed. The dreams that followed were odd, but not unpleasant. I'd see vast skies littered with constellations, the maiden dancing across them with ease, her hands brushing the stars as if they were low branches. Sometimes I'd hear the same melody echoing across that endless sky, carried by winds I couldn't feel. In the mornings, I'd wake rested in a way I hadn't in months. No nightmares, no anxious tossing, just the faint sense of something, someone, having watched over me through the night. I even started telling the doll small secrets. At first, it was silly things, the boy I liked in class, how much I hated math, how I wished my mom would stop fighting with my dad so often. I'd whisper them while the melody played, and though the doll never moved, I swear her painted smile grew softer, less brittle. It felt safe in a way that was addictive. Of course, I didn't realize then that safety was only the bait. It was subtle at first, easy to dismiss. One night as I wound the key and the maiden began her slow spin, the melody stumbled, just for a breath. A note dipped too low as if the box had sighed. I froze, staring at it, waiting for the crackle of gears or the click of something broken. But then the song righted itself, calm and steady once more. The next morning, I noticed the doll wasn't quite where I'd left her. She'd been on the far side of my desk when I went to bed, but now she sat closer to the edge, her glass eyes angled toward the pillow where I slept. I told myself I'd moved her without thinking, I had to have. But then, things began to happen in my dreams. The constellations I'd once found so beautiful now felt closer. Too close. They pressed in around me like walls. The maiden danced, still, but no longer free. Her spinning slowed, her porcelain arms reaching out as though she were trying to catch me. When I woke, I told myself it was nothing. A dream is just a dream. And yet that evening, when I whispered another small secret, something I'd never confessed out loud to anyone, I swore the melody shifted again, the box humming almost like approval. It was listening, and I think it liked being trusted. The first fracture. It happened on a Wednesday. I'd fallen asleep to the music box as usual, the doll perched neatly on my desk. The melody was steady, the spinning maiden calm. But sometime in the night, I woke to silence, not the peaceful kind, the wrong kind. The kind that presses against your ears, thick and waiting. When I sat up, the doll was gone from my desk. My heart skipped, but before I could move, I heard it. The faint scrape of porcelain against wood. My eyes darted toward the sound. The doll was sitting on my nightstand, inches from my pillow. her glass eyes fixed directly on me. I couldn't breathe. I didn't move. Then, as if the silence itself had been wound like a spring, the music began again. No key had turned, no lid had opened, but the melody spilled into the room, slower now, broken in places like a voice cracking mid-song. And the maiden inside the box, I saw her spinning there, though the lid was closed tight in the doll's hands. Her porcelain body turned inside the shut wood, her face pressed against the tiny gap, smiling. Gust, the song ended abruptly. The next thing I knew, morning light was pouring through the curtains. The doll was back on my desk, hands folded neatly over the box. But the nightstand still bore faint scratches, long and shallow, etched in the wood like fingernails dragged too close to where my head had been. The dream of taking. I told myself I wouldn't wind the box again. After what happened, it was the only rational choice. But that night, when the house had gone quiet, I found the doll waiting on my bed. Her porcelain fingers wrapped tight around the little box, as though she'd been holding it for centuries, just for me. And before I could think better of it, before I could even stop myself, I wound the key. The melody spilled out, low and uneven, but this time, I didn't drift into stars. I dreamed of my mother. She was standing in the hallway outside my room, her nightgown trailing like mist. Her eyes were open but empty, her mouth moving silently as if she were answering some unheard question. Behind her in the shadows, the doll appeared. Taller now, no longer desk-sized, but towering, her pale face gleaming as she held the spinning maiden aloft like a torch. The music grew louder. My mother swayed, her face slack, her feet shuffling as though pulled on invisible strings. She stepped toward the doll, arms lifted like a sleepwalker. "No," I whispered in the dream, though no sound left my throat. "Please." "No." The doll turned her head. She was smiling. And then she led my mother into the dark. I woke with a jolt, my chest heaving, the music still echoing in my ears. I rushed into the hall, heart in my throat, only to find my mother asleep in her bed, breathing evenly. But her lips were moving faintly, as if still whispering to someone I couldn't see. Between sleep and waking, the following night, I tried to stay awake. I sat upright in bed with the lamp on, arms crossed, staring at the doll where she waited on my desk. Her eyes seemed almost amused, as if she knew my defiance wouldn't last. It didn't. Somewhere between one blink and the next, I slipped under. This time, the dream wasn't stars or shadows. It was my own living room. The clock ticked, steady and slow. My father sat in his chair motionless, staring at nothing. The doll stood behind him, one porcelain hand resting delicately on his shoulder. The music box was open in her other hand. The maiden spun, and with each turn, my father's head twitched faintly, like a puppet tugged on frayed strings. His lips parted, and he began to hum along. The sound was wrong. His voice was flat, mechanical, as though drained of all warmth. I stumbled forward, desperate to stop it. But the carpet beneath my feet rippled like water, dragging me down. My father didn't even glance at me. His eyes were glassy, his humming perfectly in time with the melody. I woke in my own bed, but the humming didn't stop. For a full minute, the sound lingered in the walls of the house, low and tuneless, until it finally thinned into silence. The next morning at breakfast, my father looked exhausted, his eyes rimmed with red. He barely touched his coffee. When I asked if he'd been humming in his sleep, he blinked at me like I'd spoken another language. "What song?" he asked. "The First Vanishing." At the breakfast table, my father stared at me, waiting. His eyes were bloodshot, his spoon unmoving in the bowl. I forced a smile and shook my head. No song." Something in his shoulders loosened. He gave a tired shrug, muttered something about bad dreams, and returned to his untouched cereal. But I couldn't eat. The lie stuck in my throat heavier than food ever could. That night, I swore I wouldn't touch the music box. I set the doll in the closet, shut the door, even stacked books against it, as if that flimsy barrier could matter. Still, the melody found me. I woke in the dark to hear it trickling under the closet door, faint but steady. My skin prickled cold as I reached for the lamp, but the light wouldn't turn on. The closet door eased open with a whisper of wood. The doll stood in the crack, the music box cradled against her porcelain chest, and behind her, I saw my little brother. His eyes were closed, his bare feet dragging as if pulled forward. The doll's tiny hand rested against his back, guiding him toward me like she was presenting a gift. I tried to scream, but my voice caught in my throat. The melody swelled, drowning me in its slow, deliberate rhythm. The Maiden spun faster now, arms raised, stars circling overhead. My brother's body began to tilt forward unnaturally, his head lolling like his strings had been cut. Stop! The music collapsed mid-note. The doll froze. And then, nothing. I woke with a start, soaked in sweat. The Maiden's secret. By the third day, no one could pretend my brother was fine. He drifted through the house in silence, pale and glassy-eyed, as if sleepwalking long after morning had come. He didn't laugh at the shows he normally loved, didn't ask for snacks, didn't even respond when my mother cupped his face in her hands and begged him to tell her what was wrong. At night, I would hear him humming through the wall, the same halting melody, over and over. I wanted to tell them. I wanted to scream the truth. But the words died in my throat every time, curdled by fear that they'd think I was insane, or worse, that saying it aloud would make it real. That night, the dream came. It was not like the others. This one felt like slipping into someone else's body, someone else's memories. I stood in a room I didn't recognize, dark, lined with shelves full of porcelain dolls, each with glassy eyes that gleamed in the dim candlelight. And there, on a velvet chair, sat her, the doll. Only she wasn't small now. She was life-sized, her porcelain face smooth, her dress trailing onto the floor like melted wax. Her hands clutched the music box, which glowed faintly, stars still etched into its sides. And she spoke. Not with lips, but with a voice that slid straight into my mind. You wonder why I am, little one, why I cling, why I sing. The box opened in her hands. Inside, the Maiden spun faster and faster, her face contorting as if straining to break free. The doll's head tilted, glass eyes gleaming. She is me, I am her, once flesh, once beating heart. Long ago, I danced beneath the constellations and begged them to give me eternity. They did. The Maiden's arms stretched unnaturally wide, her porcelain face cracking as she twirled. But eternity must be fed. The shelves around me rattled. Every doll's glass eyes lit from within, and faint, discordant music spilled from their hollow mouths. Your grandmother knew. She offered me her lullabies, her secrets, her years, until she grew weak. And still, she clung to me, because I kept her dreams soft, because I held her grief at bay. I staggered back, heart hammering, but the floor rippled beneath me like water, trapping me in place. The doll rose from her chair, impossibly tall, bending down until her porcelain face filled my vision. Her voice was a hiss of stars. Now it is your turn. You opened the lid, you listened. You gave me trust. I wanted to scream, but no sound came. The Maiden spun faster, her cracked smile widening as fragments of porcelain began to splinter off her body. My brother appeared in the dream then, eyes vacant, standing beside the chair like a statue. He is almost mine, the doll whispered, but I am merciful. If you give enough, I will leave him in your world. Empty, perhaps, quiet, but alive. The music swelled until it shook my bones. My brother raised his hand as if reaching for me. His lips moved, but only the doll's voice came out. Choose, him or yourself. The dream shattered like glass. I woke, gasping, nails dug into my palms, the music still thrumming in my skull. And from the other side of the wall, my brother hummed a lullaby in perfect time with the fading echo. The first bargain. I didn't want to believe the dream. But when I saw my brother the next morning, pale and hollow-eyed, I knew it hadn't been just a dream. His plate of eggs sat untouched, his hands limp in his lap. When my father asked him a question, he didn't even lift his head. He was slipping away. That night, I wound the music box again. Not because I wanted to, but because I had no choice. I sat cross-legged on the floor, the doll before me, her glass eyes steady as the melody filled the room. "I'll do it," I whispered, my voice shook. "Just let him go, leave him alone." The doll didn't move, but the maiden inside the box spun faster, her arms rising as if in triumph. "A bargain, then," the voice coiled through my mind, smooth as silk. "Not all at once, piece by piece. You give, I release, and the boy will wake again." I swallowed hard, my palms slick. "What do you want?" There was a pause, the music hanging in the air like a held breath. "Something small to begin, something you will not miss, though you think you might. A memory." The melody deepened, a note bending sharp. "Give me the face of the one you loved first, the boy whose name you whispered to me." My throat closed. She meant him, the boy from school. The only secret I'd thought was safe. You will never recall him again. His voice, his eyes, his smile, all gone. He will walk past you in the street and you will feel nothing. I shook my head. Tears stung my eyes. "That's not fair. Fair is not the language of eternity." The maiden spun, faster and faster, until her figure blurred. "Say yes, and your brother breathes brighter tomorrow. Say no, and he fades." I broke. I whispered the word she wanted. "Yes." The melody ceased at once. The box clicked shut. The next morning, my brother sat at the table and ate a slice of toast. My mother wept with relief. But when I tried to summon the image of the boy I'd liked, his face slid away from me like fog, leaving only emptiness. The smaller losses. The first bargain worked. My brother was better, if not whole, at least breathing brighter than before. But the doll was never finished. That night, I sat on the floor again, staring at her still hands folded over the music box. When I turned the key, the melody fluttered out, brittle, like laughter caught in a throat. "More, little one," the voice whispered inside my skull. "Each thread you give, and he will be stronger. You know this now." I swallowed hard. "What do you want this time?" The porcelain maiden twirled, her edges blurred with cracks of light. Not a memory, not a face, a soul. My chest clenched. I shook my head. "No," but the voice slid over me like silk. "Something simple, the small one that curls at the end of your bed, the creature that waits for you in silence, breathing your dreams with you. Give me its flame. One breath, one blink, and it is mine." My throat burned. "Please, not that, not Lyra." The music deepened, drowning me. "Yes, Lyra, say the word, and your brother will walk in daylight again. Refuse, and he is mine instead." The doll's eyes gleamed, the maiden spun, faster, faster. I broke. I whispered, "Yes." The music cut off instantly, as if swallowed. The doll closed her porcelain fingers around the box with delicate finality. I fell into a dreamless dark. When morning came, my brother laughed at something my father said, clear and warm as sunlight. My parents beamed, relief softening their faces. But I couldn't smile, because Lyra's corner of the room was empty, her blanket untouched, the silence too sharp, too absolute. She was gone, and I knew, deep in the hollow that had opened inside me, that the doll had feasted. The poison. It began with a voice in the dark. A thread is not enough. A face is not enough. A soul of fur is not enough. Now I want flesh. I froze, clutching the blanket to my chest. "No, please, don't make me." The doll sat on my desk, her glass eyes unblinking, the music box folded neatly in her porcelain hands. The melody hadn't begun, but the voice still pulsed through me like a second heartbeat. "He comes tomorrow. Your mother's uncle. Old, brittle, ready to slip. His flame will keep your brother whole. You will do this." Tears welled in my eyes. "No, anything else. Take me. Take more memories. Take more." The voice sharpened, slicing into my skull. "If you refuse, your brother fades before morning. I will take him piece by piece until nothing is left." I sobbed into the blanket. "How?" The doll tilted her head, almost tender. "Go to the shop. Buy poison for rats. No one will question it. And when the old man rests in your kitchen with his tea, you will sprinkle it in. Just enough. The music will do the rest. The next afternoon, my mother's uncle arrived. His voice was warm, his smile weary. He sat at the table with his tea, humming softly while my parents bustled in the other room. My hands trembled as I reached into my pocket. The little packet burned against my skin like fire. No, please, not this. But the music began in my mind, though no box had opened. A slow, steady lullaby, each note pulling the strength from my resistance. Do it. Or watch your brother choke in his sleep tonight. I sobbed silently, shaking so hard the spoon nearly fell from my hand. I begged under my breath, please, please change it. Please don't make me. Do it. The words cracked like a whip. Through tears, I opened the packet and sprinkled the powder into his cup. The steam carried it upward, bitter and invisible. I stirred once, twice, my heart breaking with every turn. When I set the cup back before him, my hands were slick with sweat. He smiled kindly at me, lifting the tea to his lips. He drank, and in the same breath, his face collapsed inward. The life fled him so swiftly it was like a candle snuffed out by wind. His eyes glazed, the cup slipping from his fingers, spilling tea across the tablecloth. At that very instant, I heard it, the sharp, brittle crack of porcelain shattering upstairs. I ran. I didn't wait for my parents' shouts. I bolted up the steps, 2 at a time, and threw open my bedroom door. The doll lay in pieces across the floor, her face split, her hands shattered. The music box was silent, its constellations dark, and across the hall, my brother's laugh rang out, clear, full, alive. Morning brought chaos, my mother's screams, my father's pale face, police swarming the house, questions fired like bullets. I told the truth, every word. The doll, the music, the bargains. They didn't believe me. The trial was swift. A child with poison, a dead old man, the verdict cut like a blade. I was sentenced. Prison, bars, and my parents fined $30,000. I remember my mother's eyes as they led me away. They were empty as mine had become. And though the doll was gone, the melody still hummed faintly in the back of my skull, as if shards of porcelain could still sing. What remains? My name is Emma. I'm 27 now. A year ago, they let me out of prison. I served just over 14 years. Too young when I went in, too old when I came out. When I was first locked up, the doctors called it schizophrenia. They said the doll, the voice, the bargains, all of it was a psychosis. That was why my sentence was shorter than it should have been. I wasn't a murderer, they said. I was sick. I tried to believe them. I really did. But if it was all illness, then how do I explain my brother? How he suddenly got better the same night the porcelain shattered. How his laughter returned as mine died. None of it makes sense. My parents are gone now. A car accident, 5 years back. The police said it was quick. I didn't go to the funeral. I was still behind bars then. My brother survived. More than that, he lived. He got married. He even has a child now, a little girl with his same eyes. Sometimes I wonder if he remembers what happened, if he feels the weight of what I gave up so he could walk free. And me? I walk the streets alone. No family, no job that lasts more than a few months. Just a pile of fears, bad memories, and far too much lost time. At night, I dream of constellations. The Maiden still spins, arms raised, cracks splitting her porcelain face. And sometimes, just sometimes, I swear I hear it. Soft, patient, waiting, as though it never really ended.